The skeletal arch of the International Bridge Toll Plaza at night slices the obsidian sky, a jagged scar against the distant city's indifferent gleam. You stand beneath its cold, concrete belly, the relentless thrum of passing vehicles a dull ache behind your ears. Each car, a fleeting comet of light and shadow, streaks through the illuminated lanes, paying its tribute to passage, while you remain a static ghost. Your collar is pulled high, a meager defense against the wind's insistent claw, and the fabric of your worn jacket feels like a second skin, thin and familiar. This solitude, you've cultivated it like a rare, bitter fruit. It clings to you, a shroud woven from regret and the quiet hum of what might have been. Marcus Thorne. The name once carried the sharp, resonant clang of authority, a badge of honor polished by relentless pursuit. Now, it's a whisper, a footnote in the annals of a forgotten precinct, a shadow of the man who once walked with purpose. Dismissed as random, a street-level brutality, yet something in the way the scene had been arranged, the meticulous absence of a struggle, had always pricked at the edges of your understanding, a dissonant note in a seemingly simple melody. But the official narrative, like a heavy stone, had sealed the truth, and your insistence on digging deeper had only earned you the title of obsessed, then disgraced. A sudden, jarring shift in the rhythm of the plaza breaks your reverie. A sleek, obsidian sedan, too polished for this working-class artery, glides past the final toll booth, its headlights cutting through the gloom like predatory eyes. It doesn't merge with the outbound traffic. Instead, it veers, a silent predator, and pulls to a stop a dozen yards from where you stand, a ripple of unease spreading through the cold air. You don't flinch. Years of instinct, though dulled, still hum beneath your skin. Your hand drops, unconsciously, to a place where a weapon once rested. Nothing but the coarse wool of your trousers now. The driver's side window purrs down, revealing the chiseled profile of a man you don't recognize, yet whose presence feels unnervingly familiar. He is impeccably dressed, a stark contrast to your own rumpled attire, and the air around him seems to thicken with an unspoken gravitas. Marcus Thorne, the driver's voice is a low, gravelly rasp, a sound that cuts through the bridge's drone. Difficult to locate. You offer no reply, your eyes narrowing, assessing the stranger, the car, the calculated precision of his approach. This isn't a chance encounter. A mutual acquaintance believes you're unique. Perspective might be useful, he continues, his gaze unwavering. There's a situation. One that requires a man who isn't afraid to look where others dare not. My looking days are over, you retort, the words tasting like ash. My perspective is now limited to the bottom of a glass. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touches the corners of the driver's lips, a glint of something akin to amusement. Perhaps pity. Perhaps. But some stories, Marcus, refuse to stay buried. They claw their way back to the surface, demanding an audience. Demanding justice. The word hangs in the frigid air between you, a forgotten melody. Justice. Passionate about. It's resurfaced. Not as a random act, but as a thread in a much larger tapestry. A jolt, like a current, shoots through you. The one that had defined your downfall. Your blood, which had felt sluggish moments before, now courses with a sudden, unwelcome heat. What are you talking about? You demand, your voice tighter than you intended. New information, the driver states, his eyes scanning the horizon, not meeting yours. Connections. To a prominent politician's current presidential campaign. A politician. The world, it seems, had caught up to your madness. He reaches into the car's interior, retrieving a slim, unmarked manila envelope. It's not thick, but the weight of it, even from a distance, feels significant. He places it on the asphalt between you, a silent challenge. This contains the initial details, a name, a location. Evidence suggesting the journalists' investigation was far from over when they were found. And that their silence was not just convenient, but orchestrated. The envelope sits there, a stark white against the oil-stained ground, a beacon in the night. It promises answers, and with them, an undeniable pull back into the very world you swore you'd left behind. It's a chance, not just at redemption, but at a truth that has haunted your waking hours and poisoned your sleep. The tension in the air is palpable, a tight coil winding around your chest. The driver offers one last, piercing look, then the window glides back up, sealing him within his polished cage. With a silent hum, the sedan pulls away, merging seamlessly into the stream of outbound traffic, leaving you alone once more. But the solitude is different now. It is no longer empty, but charged, brimming with the raw electricity of possibility. Your eyes fix on the envelope. Your hand, trembling almost imperceptibly, reaches for the envelope, its surface cool beneath your fingertips. The world you had abandoned has found you again, and it is demanding your attention. The stark white envelope, a defiant flag against the grime, demanded your attention. The chill of the night air, usually a balm, now seemed to sharpen the edges of your resolve, or perhaps, your fear. You knelt, the gravel biting into your knees through worn denim, and your fingers, calloused from years of gripping things other than a pen, closed around its crisp surface. It was heavier than you expected, not just with paper, but with the phantom weight of old failures, of whispers and shadows. Headlights, like hurried ghosts, streaked past, their brief, blinding flares illuminating the skeletal steel girders above. The air tasted of exhaust fumes and the distant, briny promise of the river. You tore open the flap, a sound like a gasp in the quiet roar of traffic. Inside, a burner phone, sleek and anonymous, and a single, folded sheet of paper. No sender, no salutation. Just a number, scrawled in an elegant, looping hand that felt out of place in this industrial wasteland. To call was to step back, to re-enter the labyrinth you'd fought so hard to escape. It was to invite the ghosts of Eleanor Vance, the brilliant investigative journalist whose unsolved murder had fractured your world, to dance in your periphery once more. It was to confront the sneering faces of those who had stripped you of your shield, your badge, your very identity. But the thought of her, of the truth that had always eluded you, was a persistent, gnawing ache. Redemption, or merely an answer, shimmered like a mirage. You pressed the call button. A single ring. Then, a voice, gravelly and low, like stones tumbling in a deep well. Thorne. Not a question, but an affirmation. You know who this is, you stated, your voice rougher than you intended, the years of disuse showing. And you know what this is. A chance. Yours for the taking, or for letting rot in the dustbin of history, just like they want it. The voice paused, letting the implication hang heavy in the air. The files are waiting. Same location as the envelope, under the third grate from the west pillar. A black briefcase. Don't waste my time, Marcus. The line clicked dead. No negotiation, no plea. Just an expectation. You found the spot, guided by the dim glow of a distant street lamp, and pulled a heavy, scuffed leather briefcase from beneath a rusty grate. It smelled of old paper and something else, a faint, metallic scent that prickled the hairs on your arms. Back in your beat-up sedan, parked in the lonely shadow of a forgotten warehouse near the plaza, you opened the briefcase. The interior was packed tight, manila folders overflowing with yellowed documents, photocopies of crime scene photos, witness statements, and a small, encrypted data stick. The name of the victim, Eleanor Vance, stared up at you from the cover of the initial police report, her bright, intelligent eyes forever frozen in the grainy photograph. You began to sift, your fingers tracing the familiar contours of a case file. But even then, something had felt off, a dissonant chord in a seemingly simple melody. You remembered the detective, a veteran with weary eyes, who had closed the case with a sigh of relief. You remembered the chief, a man whose ambition eclipsed his ethics, nodding approvingly. Now, with new eyes, you scoured the details. A crumpled receipt from a coffee shop near the campaign headquarters of Senator Elias Vance, no relation to Eleanor, or so they said at the time. A handwritten note in Eleanor's journal, almost illegible, mentioning the Vanguard, a term you'd dismissed as a fictional group from one of her articles. Your gaze fell upon a photograph of Eleanor's apartment, ransacked but oddly specific in its chaos. Her computer tower was gone, but a small, leather-bound notebook lay half-hidden beneath a stack of research papers. You recalled the initial investigation overlooking it, attributing its presence to the general disorder. Now, you saw the faint indentations on its cover, a stylized V intertwined with an eagle's wing. The same emblem you'd seen subtly stitched onto the lapel of a campaign aide during a recent television interview with Senator Vance. It was a live wire, humming with dangerous current, buried beneath years of deliberate obfuscation. The random act began to unravel, exposing threads that led directly into the gilded cages of power, to the very people who now sought to lead the nation. Eleanor Vance hadn't just been a victim, he had been a threat. And her death, once a blight on your early career, was now a meticulously placed stepping stone in a much larger, far more sinister design. You were no longer just looking for answers, you were hunting. The scuffed leather briefcase, cool and heavy in your grip, felt like a forgotten limb reattached. Its weight was a promise, a burden, a phantom ache of what was and what could be again. The faint glow of the distant street lamp cast your shadow long and distorted across the broken pavement as you rose, the chill of the night seeping through your jacket. No negotiation, no plea. Just the cold, hard demand that had stirred the sleeping beast within you. The engine of your old sedan grumbled to life, a familiar comfort against the rising tide of unease. You drove, the city lights blurring into streaking ribbons of amber and sapphire, a restless current pulling you towards a place you had sworn never to revisit. The memory of the journalist's body, sprawled like a broken marionette, still etched itself onto the landscape of your mind, a permanent scar on the canvas of that night. It loomed, a skeletal structure of steel and concrete, a leviathan straddling the black water. The air here was thinner, sharper, carrying the scent of diesel and the metallic tang of the river. Headlights from the occasional passing vehicle sliced through the gloom, momentarily illuminating the vacant toll booths, their windows reflecting a distorted world. Years had stripped away the crime scene tape, the flashing lights, the grim faces of your colleagues, but the residue of violence clung to the very air. You stepped out, the gravel crunching under your boots, a sound amplified in the vast, desolate space. The wind, a constant, mournful sigh, whipped at your clothes. You walked the path the first responding officers had taken, the path you had walked, tracing the ghost of a perimeter. You remembered the haphazard scattering of the journalist's belongings, the overturned bag, the contents strewn like fallen leaves, a notebook, a voice recorder, a scattered handful of coins. Nothing conclusive, nothing definitive. Your gaze fell upon the concrete base of the second toll booth, where the journalist's head had rested in a macabre tableau. You knelt, fingers tracing the rough, unforgiving surface, feeling for an echo, a resonance. The years had scoured away the stains, but not the impression. You remembered the frustrated sighs of the forensic team, the dead ends, the pressure from above to close the file, to label it a mugging gone wrong. A random act. You had fought it then, and you felt the fight rekindle now, a slow burn in your gut. Later, in a diner that smelled of stale coffee and desperation, you met with an old colleague. The place was almost empty, the fluorescent lights buzzing with a sickly yellow glow. Your colleague, a man whose face had deepened with the same weariness that lined your own, pushed a lukewarm mug towards you. "Marcus," he greeted, his voice a low rumble, devoid of surprise. "Heard you were sniffing around." You met his gaze across the formica table. "The Thorne case. It's open again." He took a slow sip of his coffee, his eyes flickering towards the empty booths around them. "Officially, it's still closed." "You know how it went down." "I know how it was made to go down," you corrected, your voice tight. The journalist was onto something. Something big. We all felt it. He sighed, a heavy sound that seemed to carry the weight of years. "Feeling isn't evidence, Marcus, and some things are best left buried. For everyone's sake." His gaze held a warning, a subtle tremor in his voice that spoke of unspoken threats. "You've been out of the game. You don't know the players now. They're bigger, Marcus. Much bigger." "Who?" you pressed, leaning forward. "Who are you talking about?" He shook his head, pushing his mug away. "I can't. Just be careful. Some doors, once opened, can't be closed without a price." He stood, dropping a few crumpled bills on the table. "Don't say I didn't warn you." He walked away. His words, a chorus of dismissal and veiled threat, echoed in your mind as you returned to the plaza. The moon had begun its descent, painting the scene in stark silver and charcoal. You knew the official reports by heart, the diagrams, the photographs. And there, tucked deep within the narrow gap, almost completely obscured by years of grime and corrosion, your fingers brushed against something delicate, something foreign. You carefully pried the panel open, scraping away the hardened dirt. What you found was a small, folded piece of paper, water-stained and brittle, yet miraculously preserved within its concrete tomb. You unfolded it with painstaking care, your breath held tight in your chest. The ink was faded, but discernible. A sequence of letters and numbers, X17JQ92R. And beneath it, a small, hand-drawn symbol, a stylized, interlocking knot, intricate and unsettling, like a serpent devouring its own tail. This was no random trash. This was deliberate. A hidden message, a breadcrumb left for someone, anyone, to find. The journalist hadn't been a victim of chance. And you, Marcus Thorne, had just disturbed their icy slumber. The lingering bitter taste of the colleague's warning clung to your tongue, a phantom chill in the pre-dawn air. Yet, a stubborn ember, long banked, now flared within you. Marcus Thorne, no longer shackled by the badge, felt the familiar pull of a puzzle unsolved, a ROM unrighted. The journalist's meticulous notes lay spread before you, a labyrinth of cross-referenced documents, cryptic annotations, and fragmented data. Your fingers, calloused from years of gripping cold steel and sifting through dusty truths, traced the hurried script. You consumed every word, every underlined phrase, every circled date. It was a mosaic of financial statements, land registry documents, and campaign contribution reports, all leading to a single, recurring name, a prominent politician, now poised on the cusp of a presidential campaign. At first, the connections were tenuous, threads easily dismissed as the ramblings of an overzealous reporter. But as you delved deeper, a pattern emerged, stark and undeniable. The journalist had meticulously documented a series of shell companies, each linked by a subtle corporate signature, funneling vast sums into the politician's early campaign coffers. These funds, you deduced, originated from a colossal corporate entity, a conglomerate whose tendrils reached into every major infrastructure project across the nation. You mentally dubbed it the corporate architect, its presence a silent, pervasive hum beneath the surface of legitimate commerce. A massive proposed expansion of the international bridge network, for instance, a project poised to generate billions, was consistently championed by the politician. And who, you found, owned the primary construction and engineering firms slated to bid on such a venture? The corporate architect. A single, faded photograph, tucked into a binder labeled red herring, caught your eye. It depicted a smiling politician shaking hands with a stern-faced individual at a gala, their backdrop a banner emblazoned with the corporate architect's logo. The journalist had circled the stern-faced individual's wrist, where a distinctive, antique signet ring gleamed. You remembered seeing that ring, or one strikingly similar, in an old society magazine, gracing the hand of the conglomerate's reclusive chairman. Your breath hitched. This wasn't just about campaign finance, it was about systemic influence, a carefully orchestrated dance between power and profit, with the politician as the public face and the corporate architect as the puppeteer. The journalist hadn't been chasing a random story, they had been unraveling the very fabric of controlled governance. This was why the original investigation had been so quickly dismissed. You had stumbled into the heart of something vast, something dangerous. A sudden, sharp crack from the street below startled you, pulling you from the labyrinth of documents. The streetlights outside seemed to dim momentarily, then flicker back to life. You had found the link. And perhaps, in doing so, you had announced your presence. A need for air, for movement, for the raw, unvarnished truth of the city's pulse, compelled you. You grabbed your worn leather jacket, the weight of the journalist's findings pressing heavily on your mind. You decided to drive, to clear your head, to let the pieces coalesce. The plaza itself was a stark, almost skeletal structure against the bruised canvas of the sky. Fluorescent lights cast a harsh, unforgiving glare on the asphalt, illuminating the empty booths and the few scattered vehicles. You slowed, approaching the unmanned electronic toll gate, your mind still replaying the connections you'd made. The politician, the corporate architect, the journalist's untimely end. A sudden, blinding flash of high beams filled your rearview mirror. A black sedan, sleek and anonymous, accelerated rapidly, closing the distance between your vehicles with alarming speed. You swerved, wrenching the steering wheel hard to the right, narrowly avoiding a collision as the sedan veered sharply into your lane, its intent unmistakable. The harsh shriek of tires tearing across the concrete ripped through the quiet night. Your hands clenched the steering wheel, knuckles white, a tremor running through your arms. You checked your mirrors, your eyes scanning the deserted plaza. Nothing. It wasn't a random act. It was a message, delivered with brutal clarity. You had dug too deep. You had touched a nerve. The stakes, you now understood with terrifying certainty, were higher than you had ever imagined. The automated booths, their green and red lights blinking in a rhythmic, monotonous pulse, stood like sentinels guarding the passage to another land. You had arranged access through a contact, a minor official who owed you a favor from a lifetime ago. Inside a small, utilitarian office adjacent to the plaza, a monitor flickered to life, displaying a grid of dated surveillance footage. The archival system was clunky, its interface a relic, but it held the ghosts of countless journeys. You leaned closer, your breath fogging the cool glass of the screen, eyes scanning the grainy black and white frames from the night the journalist vanished. Hours bled into hours, a slow, meticulous crawl through the past. You watched the river of cars, each one a fleeting presence, a potential clue. The journalist's car, a modest, unassuming sedan, appeared precisely when your notes indicated, passing through lane 3 with a driver whose face remained a pixelated blur. Then, nothing. The case file had dead-ended here, dismissing it as a routine crossing, the journalist disappearing somewhere on the other side. But the embers of your intuition, now a small, insistent flame, urged you to keep watching. You scrolled forward, then back, a restless spirit seeking what had been overlooked. And then, it appeared. Not immediately after, but a full 7 minutes later, in lane 2. A different car, an older model, a reliable sedan, much like the one you knew so well from your early days on the force. Your spine stiffened. It was the kind of detail that could be dismissed, just another vehicle in the endless stream. But something caught your eye, a barely perceptible anomaly on the car's rear window, almost lost in the digital noise. You zoomed in, the image dissolving further into a mosaic of squares, yet the shape persisted. A stylized bird, rendered in what looked like a quick, almost childlike sketch. A small, elegant curve of a wing, a sharp beak. It was a symbol you knew. Not from a case file, not from a public record, but from the margins of countless briefing notes, from the back of a coffee-stained coaster, from a cheap, plastic keychain. You remembered the colleague's alibi from that night, offered so casually during the initial, chaotic stages of the investigation. A family emergency, miles away, in the opposite direction of the bridge. It had been accepted without question, a courtesy extended between partners, between friends. Now, the image on the screen, faint as it was, screamed a different story. The car, unmistakably, was heading across the bridge, away from the supposed emergency, towards the very direction the journalist had vanished. Your fingers trembled as you paused the footage, the bird symbol frozen in its pixelated flight. A rush of memories, sharp and unwelcome, flooded your mind. The countless hours spent dissecting cases with that colleague, the shared frustration, the mutual respect. And the way you had, perhaps, been too quick to believe, too eager to trust, too confident in your own judgment, allowing a blind spot to form where loyalty superseded scrutiny. The betrayal was not just a possibility, it was a chisel chipping away at the foundation of your past. Was this an oversight, a forgotten detail, or something far more deliberate? Had the colleague actively misled you, then, or were they part of something larger, something sinister, now? The thought was a bitter draft, burning down your throat. Was that a genuine concern, or a subtle redirection, a further layer of misdirection? You stared at the screen, the stylized bird a mocking silhouette against the digital static. It was a phantom limb, an old wound tearing open anew, revealing the rot beneath. The personal connection was undeniable, agonizing. A decision you had made, a trust you had placed, now twisted into a potential instrument of deception. The tension in the small, cramped office was a palpable weight, pressing down on you, Marcus Thorne, a man caught between the ghosts of his past and the terrifying, unfolding truth of his present. And this time, it was personal in a way you could never have imagined. You returned to the asphalt's cold embrace, the roar of the city a fading echo behind you, your headlights cutting a narrow path towards the border. Orange sodium lamps cast a sickly glow, painting the vacant booths in shades of false warmth, highlighting the dust motes dancing in the frigid air. A memory surfaced, unbidden, from the depths of the original case files, a peculiar detail about the journalist's habits, dismissed then as irrelevant eccentricity. A small, waterproof pouch, always carried, always secured, even when others would discard such a cumbersome item. The old lead detective had scoffed, calling it prepper paranoia. You, however, had always felt a tremor of significance in its mention. The journalist, meticulous and paranoid, would not have simply lost it. They would have secreted it away, a final failsafe. The wind, sharp and unforgiving, whipped at your coat. Each discarded wrapper, each pebble, each crack in the asphalt was scrutinized, a potential hiding place or a false trail. Minutes stretched into an eternity, each tick of the distant clock a slow, deliberate beat against your rising anticipation. The bridge, a silent sentinel, loomed above, its cables like taut nerves against the inky canvas. You knelt beside a weathered concrete divider, where the original investigation had focused solely on traffic patterns, ignoring the periphery. Your fingers, growing numb, traced the rough texture of the wall, searching for any anomaly, any sign of disturbance. And then, a tremor. It was small, no bigger than your thumb, sealed with meticulous precision. A magnetic latch, cleverly disguised. You pried it open with a fingernail, the faint click echoing in the vast quiet. Inside, nestled against a small desiccant packet, was a miniature USB drive. Back in the relative warmth of your vehicle, the glow of your laptop screen became a beacon. The device hummed, a small icon appearing on the desktop. The journalist's meticulous nature was evident even in death. The drive was not password protected, but its contents were encrypted, a labyrinth of alphanumeric characters. You remembered the journalist's public key, a string of symbols they'd once shared in a drunken boast, dismissing it as unbreakable. A wry smile touched your lips. Unbreakable, perhaps, but not unfindable. You had a copy, squirreled away in the digital archives of your memory, a remnant from a different life. With a few swift commands, the decryption protocol initiated. The progress bar crawled, each pixel a slow revelation. Then, a cascade. Files unfurled, a digital tapestry woven from the journalist's final days. The screen flared, revealing a ledger, meticulously detailed. Dates, names, and exorbitant sums. And then, the true horror coalesced. One entry, stark and undeniable, detailed a transfer of funds from a numbered offshore account directly to a foundation controlled by the senator, the very politician whose campaign now dominated the news cycles. But it wasn't just money. Actively orchestrated, a puppet on strings pulled by an unseen hand. The journalist's last entry, a hurried, fragmented audio file, played through your laptop's speakers. Their voice, raspy with fear, yet brimming with a defiant urgency, detailed a planned meeting, a final exchange of documents, right here, at the toll plaza, with a contact who never materialized. They spoke of the syndicate's reach, of the senator's complicity, of the truth being buried. The final seconds were a garbled scream, cut short. The truth was not merely inconvenient, it was catastrophic, capable of dismantling the very foundations of the nation's political landscape. You sat there, the hum of the laptop a low counterpoint to the thrumming in your ears. The evidence, undeniable and damning, lay before you. It was a burden, a responsibility, and a death sentence wrapped in a digital package. The colleague's warning, once a bitter taste, now felt like a prophecy. But the ember, long banked, was now a roaring inferno. You were no longer just Marcus Thorne, the disgraced detective. You were the last line of defense for a truth that powerful men sought to bury forever. You leaned forward, your fingers hovering over the keyboard, a grim determination settling in your eyes. You would see this through, no matter the cost. You drove, the rumble of the engine a low thrum against the silence of your thoughts, a solitary vessel cutting through the encroaching night. The air shimmered with the distant roar of engines, a constant, low growl that spoke of movement and passage. As your vehicle merged with the stream of late-hour travelers, the plaza unfurled before you, a grid of illuminated booths, each a glowing cage, manned by stoic figures. The air, thick with the scent of diesel and the faint tang of lake water, pressed against your senses. You were here for a fleeting exchange, a sliver of truth promised by a source who had only offered cryptic warnings and a rendezvous point. Your eyes, honed by years of surveillance, scanned the tableau. The methodical rhythm of cars pulling forward, the clang of coins, the brief, dispassionate nods between driver and toll collector. Nothing seemed amiss, yet the hairs on your arms stood sentinel. The colleague's voice, a gravelly echo, cautioned against trusting anyone, against believing any path was clear. It had been there for too long, static amidst the flow. A knot tightened in your stomach. You pulled into your designated lane, the automated voice from the booth a flat, mechanical drone. It wasn't the contact you expected. This was a messenger, a conduit, eyes wide with a desperate urgency. Beneath the docks. The ledger. Then, as abruptly as he appeared, he vanished, swallowed by the stream of pedestrians making their way towards the pedestrian walkway. But his disappearance wasn't unnoticed. Two figures, burly and precise in their movements, spilled from its doors, converging on the spot where the messenger had been. They hadn't come for you, not directly, but for the information. And now, by proxy, they were coming for you. Your hand tightened around the small, smooth object, a micro-SD card, no bigger than your thumbnail. The sedan was swerving, its path now directly intersecting with yours. The toll collector in your booth, startled by the sudden aggression, fumbled with your change. You didn't wait. Slamming the car into reverse, you peeled backward, tires squealing a protest against the asphalt. Horns blared, headlights flashed in angry confusion. The pursuing vehicle, caught off guard, hesitated for a crucial second. That second was all you needed. You cut sharply across an empty lane, swerving around a bewildered truck driver, and accelerated towards the ramp leading away from the plaza, away from the border, back into the labyrinthine streets of the city. Its high beams flared in your rearview mirror, two furious eyes burning holes in the night. The pursuit was relentless. through narrow back alleys, past sleeping storefronts, the roar of their engine a constant, guttural threat. You were a fox in the hunt, the scent of your fear, though suppressed, surely carried on the wind. This wasn't merely a warning anymore, it was an active declaration of war. Finally, with a desperate burst of speed and a sharp, unexpected turn into a derelict industrial park, you lost them amidst a maze of crumbling warehouses and forgotten machinery. You cut your engine, plunging into the inky blackness, the only sound the frantic hammering of your own pulse against your ribs. Your breath hitched, ragged and shallow, but your fingers never loosened their grip on the micro SD card. The tiny card slid into the slot. The ledger. You ran a quick search, filtering by old industrial zones, by proximity to the city's forgotten waterways. A particular address, long defunct, surfaced. An abandoned shipping company, its last recorded activity decades ago. And beneath it, on an old municipal blueprint, a sub-level access point, marked only as maintenance tunnel. The ledger. The politician. The journalist. The journalist, brilliant and relentless, must have uncovered something linking the politician directly to this hidden operation, a financial conduit, a clandestine hub. And it was hidden in a place only the most determined would find. You were holding a thread, fine but strong, leading straight to the heart of the web. The cost of this knowledge, however, was your freedom, perhaps your life. The predator was now fully unleashed, and you were its prey. You had the next piece, and you knew exactly where you had to go. The warehouse beneath the docks. The ledger. It wasn't a book, you realized, not paper and ink confined to a dusty shelf. The journalist, relentless in her pursuit of truth, hadn't just found a record, she'd found the key to tracing the entire shadow network. This wasn't just about a murder anymore, it was about the rot that festered beneath the gleaming surface of power, a corruption so pervasive it threatened to unravel the very fabric of your world. You knew then, with an unwavering clarity, what you had to do. Your fingers danced across the worn keys of your laptop, the screen a constellation of code and timelines. Each line of text, each cross-reference date, was a thread pulled from the tangled skein of deceit. The journalist's last, frantic notes, hidden within an innocuous cloud drive, began to sing. He had cataloged shell companies, offshore accounts, and the precise, recurring patterns of illicit transfers. You worked through the night, the only sound the hum of the machine and the rhythmic tick of the cheap wall clock. Each successful decryption was a victory, a chink in the armor of their secrecy. The names scrolled across the screen, not just the politician, but others, figures from industry, from law enforcement, their reputations pristine, their hands now revealed as stained. The mastermind, the architect of this intricate web, was a name you knew, a face you'd seen on countless news channels, a voice that promised progress and integrity. The irony was a bitter taste on your tongue. By dawn, the proof was undeniable. A meticulously compiled dossier, digital and encrypted, lay ready. It contained the complete, irrefutable evidence, the financial conduit, the names, the dates, the direct link between the journalist's investigation, her murder, and the politician's ascendancy. This wasn't just enough to expose them, it was enough to bring down an empire. But exposing them wasn't enough. Not yet. You needed to draw them out. A single, calculated message was drafted, concise and cutting. It detailed just enough of what you possessed, a tantalizing glimpse of the sword hanging over their head, without revealing the full blade. You implied a secure location for a transfer of this information, a place where the transaction could be made, where the truth could be bought or buried for good. You offered them a chance to negotiate, knowing full well it was a ruse, a bait for a trap you intended to spring. Its desolate stretch, bathed in the anemic glow of sodium lamps, the skeletal steel girders reaching into the inky sky, offered a perfect stage for this final act. The constant, low rumble of distant traffic would mask any sound. The open expanse would offer no easy escape. It was a place of passage, a border between worlds, fitting for the line you were about to cross. You sent the message, a digital arrow loosed into the heart of their network. The reply was swift, almost instantaneous, a testament to their constant vigilance. A time was set. No words were exchanged beyond the confirmation. They took the bait. You knew this was a gamble, a walk into the lion's den, but there was no other path. Redemption, if it truly existed, lay on the other side of this precipice. You checked the worn grip of the pistol tucked into your waistband, its weight a familiar comfort, a promise of last resort. Your resolve hardened, a steel rod in your spine. As dusk began to bleed into the sky, painting the city in bruised purples and oranges, you prepared. The dossier was secured, a backup replicated and hidden. Your phone, wiped clean of all but essential contacts, became a silent witness. Every detail was meticulously planned, every contingency considered, yet you knew the enemy would have their own schemes, their own unseen blades. You were walking into a trap, yes, but you were also setting one. The final pieces were in place, the board was set, and the game was about to begin. The air grew heavy with unspoken threats, the tension a palpable thing you could almost taste. You were ready for the confrontation, for the ultimate showdown, whatever its cost. Each gust whispers forgotten names through the skeletal arms of the toll booths, their yellow lights bleeding into the mist. This is the crucible, the precipice you've sought, where the threads of deceit converge. It halts precisely in the designated lane, a challenge etched into its very stillness. This is the architect, the puppeteer, the one whose unseen hand guides the politician's ascent, whose network of influence stretches like a web across the city's highest towers. Your eyes lock with the architect's, a silent acknowledgement passing between predator and prey. Marcus Thorne, the architect's voice is a low, polished rumble, carrying over the wind. A ghost from a forgotten precinct. You always were a man who couldn't let go. Some truths demand to be held, you respond, your voice steady, though a tremor of anticipation runs through your veins. Some are merely unfortunate coincidences. The architect gestures subtly, and the two enforcers take a step forward, their movements fluid, predatory. One, a hulking presence, moves to your left. The other, leaner, quicker, drifts to your right, cutting off any escape. Not this one, you counter, your gaze unwavering. Not when the coincidence involves a digital ledger, a phantom limb of finance, connecting the politician's campaign coffers to a clandestine hub of illicit dealings. Not when that ledger was the very thing the journalist was about to expose. The architect's expression remains impassive, a mask of stone. You speak of fictions, Thorne. Elaborate fantasies spun from desperation. Fantasies? You let out a short, bitter laugh. The journalist found it all. Your schemes. The journalist was about to blow the lid off the entire operation, just days before the election. That's why they had to die. Not a random act, but a calculated execution to protect your gilded cage. A flicker of something, annoyance, perhaps, or a subtle shift in calculation, crosses the architect's eyes. A convenient narrative, but where is your proof? Where is this mythical ledger? You raise the device slightly. It's not mythical. It's real. And it's no longer confined to my pocket. The journalist's final, encrypted message led me to it. And now, thanks to their relentless pursuit, this information is set to go public. Right here. Right now. The architect's composure cracks. Fool. You think you can outmaneuver us? You think a single device can undo years of careful planning? A sharp command, a mere twitch of the head, and the enforcers surge forward. The hulking enforcer is a blur of motion, a fist aimed at your head. You duck, the wind of his passage rustling your hair, and pivot, driving your elbow into his ribs. A grunt of pain, but he is unyielding, a wall of muscle. The leaner enforcer moves with a practiced grace, aiming for your legs, trying to sweep you off balance. The distant river. It's not just the device, you gasp, dodging another blow, the impact of a fist against the toll booth's metal frame echoing like a gunshot. It's the truth it carries. The politician's ambition, fueled by your corruption. The journalist's integrity, met with your brutality. You press a hidden button on the device, a tiny light blinking green. A silent signal, a data burst launched into the digital ether. The architect sees it, a sudden understanding dawning in their eyes, replaced by fury. Stop him. Get the device. The enforcers redouble their efforts, a whirlwind of fists and feet. You parry a kick, the impact jarring your arm, and use the momentum to spin, creating a sliver of space. Your mind races, calculating angles, weaknesses. You are outnumbered, outmatched in raw power, but you have the element of surprise, the burning conviction of justice. You slam your back against a concrete barrier, using it as a shield against the hulking enforcer, then push off, sending him stumbling back towards the architect. The leaner enforcer closes in, a knife flashing in his hand, its edge catching the yellow light. You sidestep, the blade slicing air where your chest had been, and grab his wrist, twisting with all your might. A sharp crack, a cry of pain, and the knife clatters to the ground. But the hulking enforcer recovers, a roar tearing from his throat, charging you like a bull. This isn't just about stopping the data, it's about silencing you. Permanently. With a surge of adrenaline, you duck under the hulking enforcer's wild swing, driving your shoulder into his midsection. He fights back, a desperate struggle for purchase, but your resolve is a steel rod. You can't bury this, you yell, your voice raw, as you push him against the railing. The journalist's ghost won't let you. The leaner enforcer, nursing his injured wrist, tries to retrieve the fallen knife. Time compresses, each second stretching into an eternity. You make a split-second decision. Releasing the hulking enforcer, you kick the knife away from the leaner enforcer's grasp, then turn, a desperate sprint towards the architect. You know the bullet is coming. But the data is out. The truth, a wild current, has been unleashed. You feel a searing pain, a sudden, burning impact, and the world tilts. But as you fall, your gaze locks on the architect, whose mask of composure has finally shattered, revealing a raw, desperate fear. It is free. The hulking enforcer, released from your grip, stumbles backward, a lumbering shadow against the sodium blow. His momentum, however, is your shield, a fleeting, desperate buffer. The leaner enforcer, swift as a viper, lunges for the fallen knife, his eyes narrow slits of predatory intent. But your gaze is fixed on the architect, whose hand, steady as granite, brings the small, dark pistol level. Time, a cruel trickster, stretches and snaps. The sharp report of the weapon cracks the night air, a violent punctuation. You feel a searing heat, a phantom touch that doesn't quite connect, even as the concrete pillar behind you spits a shower of fine dust and shrapnel. A split second later, a cacophony erupts. The wail of sirens, a symphony of urgent warning, slices through the steady hum of distant traffic. Police. The command, amplified by a bullhorn, echoes, bouncing off the metal gantries and the glass booths. The detective, his face grim but relieved, is among them, his own weapon drawn, trained on the architect. The architect, momentarily startled, hesitates, his eyes darting between you and the converging force. That sliver of indecision is all they need. A heavy-booted officer slams into him, disarming him with a swift, brutal twist. The pistol clatters to the ground, a harmless piece of metal now. The hulking enforcer, still disoriented, is wrestled to the asphalt, his grunts swallowed by the surge of activity. The leaner enforcer, knife in hand, makes a desperate dash for the edge of the plaza, a phantom in the flashing light, but he too is quickly intercepted, brought down with a practiced tackle. You stand amidst the sudden calm, the adrenaline draining, leaving a tremor in its wake. A sharp pain blossoms in your ribs, a dull ache that reminds you of the hulking enforcer's earlier blow. The detective approaches, his expression a complex tapestry of relief, exhaustion. A hint of something akin to admiration. "Marcus," he breathes, his voice rough. "You're a damn magnet for trouble." He gestures to your side. "You okay?" You nod, a faint wince escaping as you test the bruised muscle. Close call. Your eyes scan the scene, settling on the architect, now cuffed and being led away. The detective nods, a tight line to his mouth. More than just the architect, Marcus. He was the enforcer for something bigger. He pauses, lowering his voice, pulling a small, encrypted data chip from an evidence bag. "We found this in his coat pocket. It's a ledger, Marcus. Names, dates, transactions. Payments to shell companies, untraceable accounts. And a series of coded messages, encrypted with a key we just cracked. They refer to the network. And within those messages, one name appears repeatedly, linked to the initial random attack on the journalist, the broker." Your breath hitches. The broker. A new layer, a new name, confirming what you'd long suspected, the architect was a pawn, albeit a powerful one. The conspiracy stretched further, higher. The original report, dismissed as unsubstantiated, was the truth, distilled. The plaza, moments ago a battleground, is now a meticulous crime scene. Forensic technicians move with quiet purpose, marking evidence, taking photographs. The flashing lights paint the scene in stark, urgent strokes. News vans, their satellite dishes extended like metallic arms, begin to arrive, drawn by the sirens and the sheer gravity of the arrests. The story, once buried, is about to explode. You watch the unfolding spectacle, a strange detachment settling over you. The truth about the journalist's murder, long twisted and obscured, would now be laid bare. The politician's presidential campaign, built on a foundation of carefully constructed lies, would crumble under the weight of this revelation. The public, so easily swayed by manufactured narratives, would finally see the true face of power. A wave of exhaustion, profound and bone-deep, washes over you. The fight is not entirely over, you know, but this battle, this crucial turning point, has been won. The cost, however, is palpable. Your body aches, a testament to the blows absorbed, the risks taken. But the deeper ache is in your spirit. The years of carrying the weight of that failure, the gnawing doubt, the relentless pursuit of redemption, it had all led to this moment. This justice, however belated, was for them. But what of Marcus Thorne? The disgraced detective, now the reluctant hero. Would the badge be offered back? The path you'd walked to get here had fundamentally altered you. The man who wore that badge before was gone, replaced by someone scarred, yes, but also forged anew in the crucible of this relentless pursuit. The cameras flash, capturing the scene, capturing you. The world is watching, and for the first time in a long time, the truth is finally beginning to see the light. The falling action has begun, but the true reckoning, you suspect, is yet to come. The wind, a relentless sculptor, carves sharp edges into the night. Headlights blaze, then dim, as vehicles inch toward the booths, their red taillights a retreating tide against the vast, inky canvas above. The air here tastes of exhaust and the distant, metallic tang of the sea, a bitter concoction that stings your nostrils. Your gaze drifts over the ceaseless procession, each driver a phantom behind glass, a fleeting moment of connection before they vanish into the sprawl of another country. It's a mirror, perhaps, to your own journey, a crossing from the ruins of your past to this precarious present. The name, the broker, still echoes in the chambers of your mind, a whisper of a deeper current, a more insidious architect than the politician you've just helped dismantle. That architect, the prominent figure whose ambition became a noose, is now a name splashed across every digital screen, his carefully constructed empire crumbling like ancient stone. You recall the moment, only hours ago, when the final piece of the mosaic clicked into place. It wasn't a grand, cinematic revelation, but a quiet, almost understated discovery within a forgotten ledger. The journalist, whose ghost had shadowed your every step, wasn't just investigating a politician's illicit campaign funding. The ledger, tucked away in the politician's private study, a place he believed impervious to scrutiny, detailed transactions with numbered accounts, each linked to a faceless entity, a subsidiary of a larger, unseen power. This was the systemic rot you'd glimpsed, now laid bare in stark, unforgiving script. That ledger, secured by a bold stroke of calculated risk, became the keystone. The detail that broke the dam was a specific date, mirroring the journalist's last known entry in their own meticulously kept notes, a scheduled meeting, now revealed as a fatal trap. A heavy truck rumbles past, shaking the very ground beneath your feet, its exhaust a momentary cloud obscuring the distant city lights. Justice, in this moment, feels like a fragile, hard-won victory. The politician, stripped of his power and public facade, faces a reckoning. The immediate architect of the journalist's demise has fallen. And in his wake, a path has been cleared, exposing the tendrils of a conspiracy that stretches further, higher. This was your redemption, then, not a thunderous declaration but a quiet, determined excavation of truth. But you have learned its name, a crucial first step. You have seen the depth of its reach, the extent of its corruption. And you have proven, to yourself more than anyone, that you are not broken. The disgraced detective, once lost in the wilderness of his own despair, has found his compass. You push off the barrier, your posture straighter, your gaze sharper. It is the taste of a battle won, even if the war rages on. It is a symbol, perhaps, of the path you must now forge. Not back to the familiar, but forward, into the uncertain, into the ongoing fight. The badge may be gone, the reputation forever stained, but the fire, the unwavering resolve to seek justice, burns brighter than ever within you. This is not an ending, but a new beginning, a crossing into a future you must now carve for yourself, armed with truth and a renewed sense of purpose.